I think something that's quite important here is to choose problems carefully. Sometimes you don't have much choice about the problem. Disasters and emergencies is where you don't get to choose your problem, or you don't get to choose your solution. But I think that there's a problem which is, if you like, a social problem, which is developing the community of practice and the empowerment. Having conversations with blind people has, over the past year, been one of those things that's really made a big difference to my understanding of things, and also, I hope not in a bad way, to my confidence in things. So to me, it was really great that I could send this abstract to the blind math list for our meeting today, and Jonathan Godfrey responded and gave a blind person's view. Because if you're trying to deal with accessibility, you don't have any communication to and fro with blind people, then actually you're in the blind. You're just as blind as they are. You're not seeing their problems. You don't know what their problems are. And I think that developing a community of practice is one of the great things that needs to be dealt with. It's not just open source software, for example, isn't just about writing code. And a lot of it is about community building. And Nelson probably can say something about that, because he was one of the people that helped build the tech community.
Well, I certainly confess to being a strong supporter of open source software. The problem I've always found with commercial software is that it is rarely reliable in the long term and is ephemeral, and you can be in a position of having a commercial product where the company goes out of business or doesn't release a new version that matches your new operating system, and therefore the software no longer runs. And so, at least in my academic environment, where my mathematics department has, in this term, close to 10,000 students taking math courses, and we have the order of 15 to 20,000 math accounts, we just can't afford to spend lots of money on commercial products that won't be here a year or two or three from now. We do so for critical things that we believe have a long life. That includes Maple, MATLAB, and Mathematica. But most other software that was formerly commercial, we replaced with open source alternatives where we have the source code, we can rebuild it after a new operating system update if necessary. And that's let us maintain a relatively stable computing environment for our people where they don't have to keep learning new stuff. I mean, I often talk to users who live in the GUI world on desktops and laptops with Microsoft and Apple, and they get very frustrated when a new update to the web browser or their word processor changes how they did things before. One of the silly things that happened 2 or 3 years ago with one of the major web browsers was they took away the toolbar, and we wondered what the dickens happened to it, and discovered by mistake, if you hit the Alt key, the toolbar would magically appear. But otherwise, once it disappeared, people would say, well, how do I save the file that I'm looking at? It was a totally insane architectural decision, all to save about 5 millimeters of screen real estate.
Do you teach people to program in PostScript there?
Certainly it's possible, as Bill Castleman's book indicates. I think for most people it's too difficult. A major part of the issue is that PostScript, like Forth, is a reverse Polish notation language. That means that the input stream to the compiler for the language consists of a series of tokens, and most tokens it pushes onto a stack, but when it gets to a function token, it pops that function, executes it. That function in turn knows how many arguments it expects and pops those off the stack and possibly pushes a result back. And one of the ramifications of this is that those arguments can be pushed onto the stack at rather surprisingly different locations than the source code. This is also true of BibTeX style files, and it's one of the things that make them extremely difficult to deal with and modify and program with. So I don't think that's the approach we want to go for the average user. For generation of pictures, most people can get by with things like Adobe Illustrator, and there's GNU equivalents, Ink something or other. I don't normally use these tools myself. The simple figures I need can often be generated in PIC. Brian Kernahan's very nice, simple language for creating pictures in troff that get translated into PostScript and PDF and supply my needs. For more complicated things, I might turn to MATLAB or Maple or Mathematica to generate the figures. But again, the target of those efforts is essentially either a PostScript or a PDF file. And I believe once I've got it in that format, the job is done, and I can get on with other things.
Yeah, the thinking was just that PostScript isn't going to change much, I guess, and it's going to be around for a long time. So, you know, you get the reward for investing time in learning it, but as opposed to other software which will change.